Hospitals came into existence in the American colonies in 1751, courtesy of Dr. Thomas Bond and Ben Franklin. Yeah, that same Ben Franklin. As a substitute for those who couldn't receive care at home because they were poor and didn't have homes. Over the next 150 years or so, physicians advocated for the creation of community hospitals, and they grew their own medical practices into clinics that morphed into hospitals. By the early years of the 20th century, hospitals became large healthcare factories due to the size and expense of what was then cutting-edge technology, and due to the fact that it was efficient to have fewer nurses monitor large groups of patients housed in concentrated locations. But throughout that time and into most of the 20th century, hospitals remained a place where physicians independently practiced their profession. Often with privileges at multiple facilities, office practice physicians decided where best to admit their patients and to whom in their network, that is, their personal network, to refer the patients. But then, for a variety of reasons, including those that were financial and those that were regulatory, hospitals flipped the script. They began employing physicians, especially primary care doctors, to capture their referrals for their aligned specialists, dumping all of those patients into the business enterprise that the hospitals controlled. And many physicians bought the line of alignment, or as I called it at the time, the lie of alignment, which went mostly like this. You didn't go to medical school to be in business, but to practice medicine. Let us, the hospital, run the business. You just practice medicine. Physicians were very slow to realize that what wasn't said was that that sort of alignment, financial alignment, comes with control. Despite all the legal protections about the distinction between the hospital business, even the so-called nonprofit hospital business, and the practice of medicine, hospitals directly and through their employed physician taskmasters increasingly controlled how their captive physicians practiced medicine. Which takes us to today, with many hospital-employed physicians sick of hospital employment. Their compensation is lagging behind expectations and behind the cost of living, while at the same time, production requirements are increasing. In their analysis, hospitals are not devoting significant resources to patient care, but instead to bloated administration and, in many instances, outrageous administrative salaries. And then, as mentioned, there's the loss of practice autonomy as a result of hospital-exerted control. But ask yourself this: who really needs whom? Are physicians dependent upon hospitals, or are hospitals more dependent upon physicians? Just as the technology explosion of the 1950s fueled the growth of large hospitals and ultimately to hospital control of physicians, today's technology explosion fuels the opposite. Any procedure and any test that can be done outside of the hospital will be done outside of the hospital. In many cases, it will be done better and for less. Less for the payer and less for the patient. As to procedures in ASCs, It's also less in terms of infection and more in terms of physicians being able to become facility owners. Who needs the hospital for any of that? Of course, the renaissance of financially unaligned medical practice is also being fueled by the failure of many hospitals and, at the same time, of many so-called physician practice management companies. The bottom line is that there are alternatives to remaining employed by a hospital or jumping from one hospital employment situation to another one or to a big medicine equivalent. Of course, that takes resources, but the reality is that the financial resources are easier to obtain than the emotional resources. It also takes some degree of forethought, as was discussed in more detail in a recent blog post, Leaving Big Medicine. Look before you leap, that you can find on the blog at weispc.com. I think it's fair to say that many physicians think that they are dependent upon hospitals. But the reality is analogous to the adult elephant that still thinks it's a baby chained to a stump. Interested in freedom? Let's chat.